first night, I walked through the grand, creaking doors of the Eldridge Hotel. The air seemed to thicken, as if the walls themselves held a breath they'd been waiting centuries to release. My footsteps echoed hollow against the cracked marble floor, and the faded grandeur of chandeliers above caught the glimmer of a sickly yellow light. The hotel had once been the pinnacle of luxury, a gleaming beacon for weary travelers. Now it was a shadow of an era long past, stretched thin over secrets and silence. My heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and dread. The job promised steady pay and a roof over my head, but before I signed on, the old owner, Mr. Baines, sat me down and spoke in a voice like dry leaves scratching the floorboards. Listen close. If you're going to work here, there are 3 rules. These rules are not mere suggestions. They are the reason this place still stands. I nodded, absorbing the weight behind his words. Rule 1, never let the clock strike 13. Rule 2, never answer the phone unless it rings thrice. Rule 3, never open the doors when the wind doesn't blow. That night, the clock ticked with an uneven rhythm. I pressed my palm against the cold wood of the antique grandfather clock in the lobby as its hands neared midnight. With every chime, the air grew colder, denser, as if the past itself pressed closer. I remembered Mr. Baines' warning, a cold shard of fear piercing my resolve. What could go wrong if the clock struck 13? I didn't dare find out. The phone rang at exactly 8 minutes past midnight. 3 rings, then silence. Heart hammering, I waited, but did not pick up. The walls hummed with an eerie pulse. I could hear whispers curling through the corridors, half-words caught between this world and the next. Shadows darted just beyond my vision, never still long enough to be seen clearly. I tried to sleep, but the strange noises outside my door seemed like footsteps, pacing 1,000 invisible beats. The wind howled like a mourning animal. Yet sometimes a door creaked open when there was no breeze at all. Every time I resisted the urge to check the hallways, reminding myself of the second and third rules. The hotel wasn't just haunted. It breathed. It waited. In the depths of night, my breath fogged the air as frost formed on the window panes. The grand clock's hands edged momentarily past 12. And then the 13th chime wrenched itself out of the shadows. It was softer than the others, but it sounded loud enough to freeze time. I caught the feeling of something shifting in the air, and the cold. It was no longer just cold. It was alive, watching. I'm still not sure how I stayed put, why I didn't run then and there. But something in me was tethered to this place, drawn by invisible threads. The moment I stepped inside, the hotel has a pulse, a consciousness shaped by decades of pain, joy, lies, and death. Every corner hides worn stories. Every creak whispers secrets. Those 3 strange rules. It wasn't about fear or superstition. They were desperate measures. The thin line holding back the shadows that claw at the edges of our world. I thought the job was just a job. But At the moment the clock struck 13, I knew it was far more. The night unfolded like a dream soaked in frost, and I, a trapped soul, caught in the hotel's restless heart, felt the first crack in my certainty. The Eldridge Hotel's secrets were waking, and I was trapped inside with them. This sets the emotional tone and immersive atmosphere for the haunted hotel story, with the 3 strange rules, focusing on the protagonist's conflicted feelings and mounting suspense. Next, I will write part 2, which will deepen the internal and external conflicts, while escalating the eerie events tied to the rules. Part 2, the sun's first light, filtered weakly through grimy, leaded windows, casting pale shards on the tarnished brass of the elevator doors. I had made it through the night barely, but I wasn't the same. The lingering dread clung to my skin, a cold film I couldn't scrub away. I learned quickly that the Eldridge Hotel did not grant reprieve. The 3 strange rules I had been warned about were more than oddly specific guidelines. They were survival mandates. Rule 1 haunted me still. The clock. That unnatural 13th chime had fractured my night. It wasn't just a wrong number. It was a rupture in time, a crack through which shadows bled in. Since that night, the clock hadn't moved forward, but hovered between 13 minutes past midnight and 1 minute past 1, stuck in an endless loop like a broken heartbeat. No matter how many times I tried to reset it, it snapped back to its cursed rhythm. That day, I tried to speak to Mr. Baines about it, quietly in his dim office, hidden behind the reception. His face was ashen, lines deepening by the moment, as if the hotel's weight pulled at his very flesh. His eyes didn't meet mine when he said, "Some things are not meant to be fixed. The clock is our tether, holding back the night that wants to consume this place. If it stops, even for a second, the walls bleed. You saw what happens when it strikes 13. Never let it happen again." The second rule, the phone. The phone had rung again, just as dusk settled. 3 rings, crisp and insistent. I stood on the edge of answering, half lured, half terrorful. The line was dead when I finally answered. After the 3rd ring, only silence, broken by low breathing that was not my own. That silence filled the room, swirling into a whispering wind. I slammed the receiver down, heart thrumming. The voice came again, nearer this time, from unseen corners. Help, the 3rd rule, doors opening when no wind blows, made me question my grip on reality. I saw doors creak ajar, countless times, as if pushed by ghostly hands. Last night, I swore I saw a room at the end of the west corridor open wide, revealing black smoke curling in the hinge light, but I know the windows were tightly shut, and the air outside was dead still. I imagined what might cross if those doors opened on a night like this, and the thought chilled me more than the cold air ever could. The hotel was alive with a terrible hunger, a shifting presence clawing at the thin boundaries these rules wrought. They weren't just keeping ghosts at bay. They were holding back something far older and crueler. I wanted to run. I nearly did, but but each time I tried to leave, a weight pressed on my chest, heavier than fear, heavier than fatigue. A voice whispered at the edges of my mind, threading through the shadows. "You belong here." I wasn't sure if it was the hotel or my own unraveling mind. The corridors stretched longer at night, shadows twisting into figures just out of reach. The silence was broken by faint laughter, distant sobbing, the slow dragging of something heavy on stone floors. The glimpses I caught were enough to flicker drive me to madness. Pale women in tattered gowns, floating just beyond vision. Children's faces pressed to windows that no longer looked outside. Eyes full of sorrow and warning. Mr. Baines watched it all with weary eyes. A guardian too tired to fight, too connected to walk away. I could see the years carving lines of regret deep into his face. He told me once, voice cracked, "This hotel feeds on the memories trapped inside." Happy, sad, desperate. Every soul captured in time, trapped in endless night. The rules, they keep it from breaking free, as dusk pulled the day's warmth into shadow. I found myself drawn to the clock once more. I pressed my hand to its glass face, the cold biting. The grandfather clock ticked steadily at 1 minute past 1 again. But beneath that steady beat, I felt a tremor, like the shiver of something awakening just beyond the wall. I was no longer just a night clerk or a caretaker. I was a prisoner, a witness to the hotel's slow, terrible unraveling. And the strange rules weren't merely protections, they were chains. Chains that bound us all. This continues the story, with deeper emotional resonance and rising tension, expanding on the protagonist's internal struggle and the hotel's malevolent presence tied to the strange rules. Part 3 will intensify the stakes and reveal more about the hotel's dark secrets. Part 3, the hotel's nights thickened with a dreadful weight, pressing into my lungs like cold water. I couldn't escape. Every dark hour shredded my resolve a little more. I moved through the twisted halls like a ghost shaped by fear, haunted not just by shadows, but by the burden of those 3 strange rules. One evening, just as the amber glow of the setting sun vanished behind the cracked roofline, a soft tapping echoed through the hallway outside the lobby, a sound like knuckles rapping lightly on aged wood, the kind of slow, deliberate knocking that seems designed to invite, to lure closer. I knew the rules. I knew not to open unless the wind sang through the cracks in the walls. But that night, the air hung thick and unnaturally still. No breath of wind stirred the curtains or the dust motes dancing in the stairwell's weak light. The knocking persisted, a slow, measured pulse that felt like a heartbeat from the dark. With trembling hands, I approached the heavy oak door at the end of the hall. The brass doorknob pulsed cold beneath my fingers, and for a moment, I swear I felt a question pull at my breath. Should I? Could I? But the third strange rule echoed like a solemn mantra in my mind. Never open the doors when the wind doesn't blow. I stepped back, wrestling with the agony of my own hesitation, because whether it was fear or something else, the desire to open was fierce. A tug of invisible strings entwined with desperation and hope. Desperation to understand the hotel's restless hunger. Hope for some kind of deliverance from its grip. I turned away, but didn't escape the presence. For as I pulled back, a whisper brushed the edge of my hearing, so faint and fleeting that I almost doubted its existence. Help me, the voice was broken, brittle with sorrow and longing. It echoed in the empty corridors, wrapping around the peeling wallpaper and the cracked plaster. My eyes blurred with tears I hadn't realized were coming. The hotel was not just alive, it was aching. The clock, always watching, ticked relentlessly. I kept checking it compulsively. It never moved past 1 minute after one, almost as if time itself had snapped, frozen in an agonizing moment, suspended between past and future. I confronted Mr. Baines that night, desperate for answers. Under the failing light of the flickering desk lamp, I told him about the knocking, the whispers, the unbearable stillness. He sighed, his breath a soft fog in the cool air. His voice cracked as he revealed the weight of the truth. The Eldridge Hotel holds fragments of souls, those caught between worlds. They're trapped, lost here longer than memory, bound by pain and regret. The rules aren't just to keep order, they seal the breaches, where these souls try to escape. I'm telling you this because, he hesitated, because if the rules break, if the clock ever strikes 13 again, if the phone rings more than thrice, if that door at the end ever opens when there's no wind, I don't know what will come through. His eyes glistened with unshed tears and haunting memories. This hotel has seen things that no living person should face. And you are now part of it. The air tightened around me like a noose. A wave of cold sorrow swept through my chest. The weight of years crashed into that moment. Years of silenced screams and trapped hopes. In the quiet aftermath, a sound shattered the oppressive silence. The phone ringing once more, 3 times. I stared at it, heart galloping wildly. I didn't move. It stopped. For long seconds, the room held its breath. Then, a slow, low groan rose from the floors beneath me, and the temperature plummeted. Frost began tracing white lace over the cracked windows. The hotel was waking, and it wanted something. I knew my life had changed forever. The strange rules had become my prison guards. Every breath, every step, chained to a hotel that fed on anguish and would never let go. I am no longer a man in a job. I am a keeper of a restless nightmare, caught between the living and the lost. Part 3 deepens the emotional and psychological torment of the protagonist, while escalating the suspense and revealing more of the haunted hotel's soul-trapping nature, setting up for Part 4's climax and resolution. Part 4. The night stretched on like a dark wound, its edges closing in tighter with every breath I took. The air inside the Eldridge Hotel shivered with unseen cold, thick and damp, as if the very walls were soaked in sorrow. I could feel feel the pulse of the place in my veins now, the rhythm of an ancient heart beating slow, heavy, and relentless. That night, everything unraveled. The clock's hands hovered once again at 1 minute past 1, stubbornly refusing to advance. But beneath that stubborn stillness, there was a shudder, a barely perceptible trembling that raced beneath the floorboards. Then came the phone. It rang once, twice, thrice. I stared at it as it screamed its eerie summons into the silent air. Against my instincts, my fingers reached out and grasped the receiver. A cold breath whispered down the line, colder than the night itself. A voice, rasped with agony, but unmistakably human, breathed one word. Free. The door at the hallway's end, the one I always resisted, creaked slowly open, despite the absence of wind. Black smoke spilled from the crack, twisting into shapes that writhed like desperate flames hungry for escape. I knew what was coming. The rules, the 3 strange rules were breaking, and with them, the fragile barrier holding centuries of suffering and darkness inside this crumbling hotel. From the shadows stepped a figure, a woman wrapped in tattered gowns, eyes shining with unshed tears, face twisted with sorrow and rage. Behind her, faded phantoms stirred, flickering like dying stars caught in a collapsing sky. The hotel wailed with their voices, laughter and cries mingled in a cacophony of despair that clawed at the edges of my sanity. I reached for the clock, fumbling to wind its heavy hands forward, desperate to force time beyond the cursed moment. The mechanism groaned and resisted, as if burdened by unseen chains. Then the floor beneath me cracked open, and cold black tendrils stretched out like claws, grasping for flesh and soul. The weight of 1,000 trapped voices pushed against my chest, dragging me down into the abyss. But I fought back, the 3 strange rules burning bright in my mind like anchor points. I slammed the door shut, breaking the threshold between worlds. I yanked the phone from its cradle, silence finally returning as the line went dead. With shaking hands, I wrestled the clock's hands forward. The 13th chime rang out, but this time it echoed like a release rather than a curse. The woman's wail faded, her sorrow softening into a whisper of thanks. The phantoms dissolved into fragile specks of light, freed at last from their endless torment. When dawn crept through the windows, casting golden light on the cracked marble and peeling wallpaper, the hotel felt lighter, less like a tomb, and more like a shelter. The strange rules held firm, but their purpose had shifted. The Eldridge Hotel was still haunted, but tonight it found peace. And so did I. And so did I.